Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive.
hmm
I'm so excited about this one. We were going to be talking about some really cool new research.
It is really fascinating stuff.
Yeah, so we're looking at an article from OHSU.
Oregon Health and Science University.
Right.
Yep.
Oregon Health and Science University. And the article is called Scientists Discover Natural Compound That Stops Cancer Progression.
hmm
Pretty exciting. And it was published very recently.
Yeah, March 3rd, just early this month, so very new research.
Hot off the presses. And
Mhm.
when I first saw this, I thought, wow, this feels almost too good to be true. Like a single compound that can stop cancer progression. That feels like a really big claim.
It is a big claim, but the research is really interesting, and it's not just cancer that they're looking at. It's also things like MS stroke, even dementia.
So this is like a potential wonder drug that we're talking about here.
It really does seem that way. And what's really interesting is this compound, it's called sulfuretin, and it's actually a flavonoid.
Okay, now remind me, what is a flavonoid?
So flavonoids are naturally occurring compounds that you find in plants, and they're often touted for their antioxidant properties.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I've heard of those like in berries and tea and things like that.
Exactly. They're associated with a lot of health benefits, and that's what's so interesting about this. This isn't some kind of synthetic, concoction that's been cooked up in a lab. This is something that's already found in nature.
So it's not like, Frankenstein's monster drug or anything like that.
Right, exactly. And what's also really cool is that this wasn't just like a sudden aha moment for these researchers. The University of Portland has actually been systematically screening plant compounds for years, trying to find, new potential drugs and therapies. And they finally struck gold with sulfuretin.
So this is years of research culminating in this discovery.
Absolutely. It's a testament to their dedication.
It makes you wonder how many other amazing compounds are just waiting to be discovered out there in the natural world.
Oh, I'm sure there are tons.
Yeah, so let's get down to the nitty-gritty here. How can one compound have such a diverse impact? We're talking about cancer, MS, dementia, stroke. That's a lot of different conditions.
It is a lot of different conditions, but they all have something in common, and it has to do with an enzyme called CEMIP.
Okay, CEIP, CEMIP.
That's right. And what this enzyme does is it breaks down something called hyaluronic acid.
Now, I've heard of hyaluronic acid that's important for skin health, right?
It is important for skin health, but it's actually crucial for all kinds of cells in the body. It's really important for cell growth and communication.
Oh, so it's like the scaffolding and communication network of our cells.
Exactly. It's kind of like the glue that holds everything together.
So if this CEMIP enzyme is breaking down this essential hyaluronic acid, that's obviously going to cause problems.
Absolutely. It's like disrupting the very foundation of how our cells function.
But I'm still trying to wrap my head around how that connects to so many different conditions. Like, how does breaking down hyaluronic acid lead to cancer and MS and all these other things?
So there are two main ways that CM disrupts this crucial cellular framework. The first way is that it hinders the production of something called myelin.
Myelin, isn't that the stuff that surrounds nerve cells?
Yeah, it's the protective sheath around nerve cells that allows for really fast and efficient signal transmission.
Okay, so kind of like the insulation around electrical wires.
Exactly. And without healthy myelin, you get all sorts of problems like MS stroke, even things like brain development in premature infants can be affected.
So it's not just the hyaluronic acid itself, but it's like the cascading consequences of that breakdown.
Precisely. It's like a domino effect.
And what's the second way that CEMIP causes problems?
The second way is that it disrupts the normal process of cell death, which is actually a really important process in the body.
Wait, why is cell death important?
Well, because it gets rid of old or damaged cells that could potentially become cancerous.
Oh, so it's like our body's way of doing quality control.
Exactly. It's like taking out the trash. And when CEMIP disrupts this process, it allows those potentially cancerous cells to survive and multiply and spread.
So CEMIP is like a double agent wreaking havoc in both our nervous system and our body's defenses.
That's a great way to put it.
It seems like if we could control CEMIP, we could potentially solve a whole bunch of problems.
And that's where sulfuretin comes in.
Okay, so tell me more about that. How does sulfuretin work?
So sulfuretin acts as a CEMIP inhibitor. It basically blocks the activity of this enzyme.
So it's like putting a stop sign in front of CEMIP.
Exactly. And by doing that, it can potentially halt cancer progression because it restores that normal cell death process. And at the same time, it can promote myelin repair because it stops the disruption of myelin production.
Okay, so it's like a 2-for-1 deal. You get cancer protection and myelin repair all in one compound. It's pretty incredible.
It is pretty incredible, and it really speaks to the potential of this research.
But why target CEMIP specifically? I mean, couldn't there be other ways to address these issues?
Well, that's a great question, and it really gets to the heart of what makes this research so groundbreaking. You see a lot of existing treatments, they focus on individual diseases or symptoms.
So it's like treating the symptoms but not the underlying cause.
Exactly. And what makes targeting CEMIP so unique is that it addresses the root cause of multiple problems. It's like fixing a leaky faucet instead of constantly mopping up the floor.
Oh, I see. So it's a more holistic approach. It's tackling the source of the dysfunction rather than just managing the downstream effects.
Precisely. And that's why this discovery is so exciting. It has the potential to completely shift the paradigm of how we approach treating a whole range of conditions.
It all sounds pretty amazing, like a potential revolution in medicine. But are there any downsides or challenges to targeting CEMIP in this way?
Well, it's important to remember that this research is still in its very early stages.
So it's not a magic bullet just yet.
Not quite. While the results are incredibly promising, we need more research to fully understand the long-term effects and potential side effects of inhibiting CEMIP. I mean, for instance, what are the consequences of completely shutting down this enzyme? Does it play a role in other crucial processes that we don't know about yet?
Right. So it's not a simple on-off switch.
Yeah.
There could be unforeseen consequences.
Exactly. It's a complex system, and we need to proceed with caution.
So what are the next steps in this research? What needs to happen before this could potentially become a treatment for people?
So the next step is to move from those cell models to animal models.
Oh, so testing it in living organisms.
Exactly. They need to see how it works in a more complex system, how it's distributed throughout the body, whether it actually reaches the target tissues, and of course, whether it's safe and doesn't cause any harmful side effects.
So basically, it's about understanding not just if it works, but how it works within a living system and if there are any unintended consequences.
Exactly. Those animal studies are absolutely crucial before we can even think about human trials.
Right, because what works in a petri dish doesn't always translate to a living, breathing person.
Exactly. It's a critical bridge between those promising lab findings and potential clinical applications.
I know it's tempting to get caught up in the excitement of a potential breakthrough, but it sounds like we need to be patient and let the science run its course.
Absolutely. Rigorous testing is essential to ensure that any potential treatment is both safe and effective.
Well said. And on that note, I think we're going to wrap up this first part of our deep dive into the fascinating world of sulfuretin and its potential to change the face of medicine.
It's been a pleasure discussing this groundbreaking research with you so far.
And to our listeners out there, stay tuned for part 2, where we'll delve deeper into the specific diseases that sulfuretin could potentially address and what this discovery means for the future of medicine. We'll be back soon. Okay, so we're back and ready to dive even deeper into the potential of sulfuretin and its impact on CEMIP. Now, I'm curious, in part 1, we talked about how it could impact a whole bunch of different diseases like cancer, MS, even things like osteoarthritis and skin infections. What other diseases are we talking about here? What else could potentially benefit from this approach?
Well, the potential applications are really quite broad. The article we're looking at actually mentions things like osteoarthritis, skin infections, even alcohol-related brain injury, and Alzheimer's disease.
So this is way beyond just cancer and MS. We're talking about a whole range of conditions.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is that all of these seemingly unrelated conditions, they actually share a common thread. And that thread is the disruption of hyaluronic acid by this CEMP enzyme.
Right, we talked about how hyaluronic acid is like the glue that holds everything together. So when CEMP throws a wrench into that system, things start to fall apart in different ways depending on what part of the body we're talking about.
Exactly. So for instance, in osteoarthritis, the breakdown of hyaluronic acid in the joints contributes to inflammation and cartilage damage in skin infections. It can impair wound healing and the immune response. And in the brain, the disruption of hyaluronic acid can interfere with that communication between nerve cells, which can contribute to things like Alzheimer's disease.
So it's almost like CME is this master saboteur going around and wreaking havoc in different parts of the body.
That's a great way to put it. And by targeting CEMIP with sulfuretin, we could potentially address the root cause of all these different conditions.
It's like having this universal wrench that can tighten those loose bolts in all those different systems. Instead of having to treat each symptom individually, we're addressing the underlying dysfunction.
Exactly. And that's why this discovery is so exciting. It has the potential to be a real game changer.
But before we get too carried away with all the possibilities, let's take a step back and talk about the research itself. You mentioned that the initial studies were done in cell models. Can you explain what that means and why it's significant?
Sure. Cell models are basically laboratory-grown cells that allow scientists to study biological processes in a really controlled environment. It's kind of like a simplified version of the human body where you can isolate specific mechanisms and see how things work without all the complexity of a living organism.
So it's like a controlled experiment where you can manipulate variables and see what happens.
Exactly. And in this case, researchers use cell models to study how sulfuretin interacts with CEMIP and what effects it has on both tumor cells and the cells that produce myelin.
And what did they find?
The results were really encouraging. They observed that sulfuretin was very effective at inhibiting CEMIP activity, which led to things like reduced tumor growth and increased myelin production.
So it's like a proof of concept demonstrating that sulfuretin can actually target CEMIP and potentially have those therapeutic benefits we've been talking about.
Exactly, but it's important to remember that cell models are just the first step. The real test comes when you move to animal models, as this article mentions.
Right, because cell models don't capture the full complexity of a living, breathing organism.
Right.
So what are the key things researchers will be looking for when they test sulfuretin in animals?
Well, they'll be looking at several factors. First, how effectively does sulfuretin actually inhibit CEMP in a living system? Then how is it distributed throughout the body? Does it reach the target tissues? And most importantly, is it safe? Does it cause any adverse effects?
So it's about understanding not just if it works, but how it works and if there are any unintended consequences.
Exactly. And these animal studies are absolutely crucial for determining whether a compound is safe and effective before we can even think about human trials.
Right, so it's a critical bridge between those promising laboratory findings and potential clinical applications. It's tempting to get caught up in the excitement of a potential breakthrough, but it sounds like we need to be patient and let the science run its course.
I agree. Rigorous testing is absolutely essential to ensure that any potential treatment is both safe and effective for people.
Speaking of human trials, any idea when those might be on the horizon for sulfuretin?
Well, it's still very early days. The researchers are currently focused on those animal studies, which will likely take some time to complete. If those prove successful, then they can start planning for human trials. But drug development is a long and rigorous process. It could be several years before sulfuretin is available as a treatment.
That makes sense. It's a reminder that scientific progress takes time and careful consideration. But even if sulfuretin itself doesn't become a widespread treatment, the knowledge gained from this research could be incredibly valuable.
Absolutely. This discovery has opened a door to a whole new way of thinking about disease and treatment.
Like what kinds of things?
Well, for instance, the article mentions that Professor Hoffman's lab at the University of Portland screened dozens of plants before finding sulfuretin. What other compounds might be lurking in those plants just waiting to be discovered?
Oh, that's a good point. And if sulfuretin works by inhibiting CEMIP, could there be other ways to target this enzyme, maybe with synthetic compounds or even gene therapy?
Those are all fantastic questions, and I'm sure researchers are already exploring those possibilities. This discovery has really cracked open a door to a whole new world of therapeutic potential, and I can't wait to see what other breakthroughs emerge in the years to come.
This feels like we're on the cusp of something truly revolutionary, even if sulfuretin itself doesn't become a widespread treatment. The knowledge gained from this research could pave the way for entirely new approaches to tackling some of our most challenging health problems.
I couldn't agree more, and that's what I find so inspiring about this research. It reminds us that science is a journey of exploration and discovery, and every breakthrough, no matter how small, can have a ripple effect that extends far beyond our initial expectations.
So to recap, we've got a naturally occurring compound derived from plants that has shown potential in cell models to inhibit an enzyme that's implicated in a wide range of diseases, from cancer to MS. Research is now moving into animal models to test its safety and effectiveness. And if all goes well, this could eventually lead to human trials and potentially a new era of treatments.
That's an excellent summary, and it highlights a key takeaway. Sometimes the most impactful discoveries come from the most unexpected sources. Who would have thought that a simple plant compound could hold the key to tackling such complex health challenges? It's a testament to the power of scientific curiosity and the importance of exploring every avenue, no matter how unconventional it may seem.
And that's what makes science so captivating. It's a constant process of unraveling mysteries and uncovering hidden connections. We've covered a lot of ground today, but there's still so much more to explore. I'm eager to dive deeper into the specific diseases that sulfuretin could potentially address and what this discovery means for the future of medicine. All right, so we've been discussing the potential of sulfuretin to target a wide range of diseases, but let's zoom in on a couple of those, starting with cancer. What makes this discovery so promising for cancer treatment?
Well, it's the way sulfuretin tackles cancer at a really fundamental level that's so intriguing. You see, by inhibiting CEMIP, it actually interferes with cancer cells' ability to multiply uncontrollably and evade those normal cell death processes that we talked about earlier.
So instead of targeting specific types of cancer cells, it's addressing a mechanism that's common to many cancers. That sounds like a huge advantage.
Exactly, and that's one of the things that makes this approach so exciting. It holds the potential to be effective against a wider range of cancers, regardless of where they originated or their specific mutations.
That's pretty remarkable. And what about MS? We've talked about the role of myelin, that protective sheath around nerve cells. How could sulfuretin help with the myelin damage that's seen in MS?
Well, remember how we discussed that CEMIP actually hinders myelin production? And in MS, your own immune system mistakenly attacks the myelin, which leads to all those debilitating symptoms. So by inhibiting CEMIP, sulfuretin could potentially protect the myelin from that attack and may even promote repair of the existing damage.
So it's like a two-pronged approach, protecting healthy myelin and potentially restoring what's been damaged. That could be a real game changer for people living with MS.
Absolutely. And it's not just limited to MS. Think about any condition that involves myelin damage like stroke, brain injuries, even certain types of dementia. All of those could potentially benefit from this kind of approach.
It's amazing to think that one compound could have such a widespread impact on neurological health.
Yeah.
And we've also touched on other conditions like osteoarthritis, skin infections, even alcohol-related brain injury. What's the common thread that connects all these seemingly unrelated conditions?
The common thread is hyaluronic acid, and the disruption that's caused by CEMIP breaking it down. You see, hyaluronic acid is essential for so many tissues throughout the body, from your joints and your skin to your brain. And when CEMIP disrupts this, it can lead to inflammation, impaired cell communication, tissue damage, all of which contribute to this wide range of disorders.
So by inhibiting CEMIP, sulfuretin is essentially protecting that hyaluronic acid and allowing it to do its job in maintaining healthy tissues and cell function.
Precisely. It's like it acts as a shield safeguarding hyaluronic acid from degradation and allowing it to play its crucial role in all those various biological processes.
This is all incredibly exciting, but we have to ask the tough question. Are there any potential downsides or concerns about sulfuretin?
That's a very important question, and it's something that researchers are carefully evaluating in those animal studies that we talked about. And eventually, of course, in human trials, like any drug, sulfuretin could have side effects. It's also possible that it might not be effective for everyone, or there could be variations in how individuals respond to the treatment.
Right, so it's a wait-and-see situation, but those potential benefits are definitely worth exploring further.
Absolutely. And sulfuretin itself doesn't become a widely used treatment. The knowledge that's been gained from this research is incredibly valuable. It opens up all these new avenues for understanding disease mechanisms and developing more targeted therapies.
It's like a domino effect. This one discovery could trigger a whole cascade of new research and innovations, leading to even more breakthroughs down the line.
That's the beauty of science. It's this never-ending quest for knowledge, with each discovery building upon the last and contributing to our understanding of the world and our potential to improve human health.
Well said. And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into this fascinating world of sulfuretin and its potential to really change the face of medicine.
It's been an absolute pleasure exploring this groundbreaking research with you.
And a huge thank you to you, our listener, for joining us on this journey of scientific discovery. Remember, this is just the beginning of the story. Stay curious, keep exploring, and who knows, maybe one day we'll be talking about sulfuretin as a household name, transforming how we treat a whole range of diseases. Until next time.